Good morning, students. This is Katie Birch. I'm the cooperative education teacher for WASA Distance Education. We are in semester 2A, course code DC030. Sorry, more coffee needed. We're working today on topic 3. So we've gone through topic 1, are you right for co-op? Topic 2, talking about your resume and your cover letter. Quite a bit of work there. I actually am not going to have a class tomorrow. We're going to go over the job interview process today, and I'm going to give you the rest of the classes this week to get your resume, your cover letter submitted, and work on your interview questions that we're going to be covering today. As always, contact me, call me, email me if you need help. Don't stay lost. Ask for help. That's what I'm here for. My email again is kbirch@nnec.on.ca. Okay, we're going to jump right in. What are we talking about today? We're talking about the job interview. So you've made this beautiful cover letter. You've got this beautiful resume. And now they've called you in for an interview. So we're going to talk about 5 things today. We're going to talk about your appearance and how important that is in the interview process. We're going to go over 10 basic things to think about in the interview process. We're going to watch a little video on the do's and don'ts of interviewing. We're going to go over a few speaking and listening skills because answering questions in an interview is important, but also listening to what they're telling you and asking you is equally as important. And that's a skill. It really is a skill to listen and understand and respond. So we're going to talk about that today. And then we're going to go through some ways and things that you can do to prepare for the interview. If you prefer to read the information for today's class, just dive right into Google Classroom. Everything you need is in there. If you click on topic 3, your best foot forward, you'll see that there's something to read, something to watch, and a handout that goes through all the things we're talking about today. If you're an auditory listener, like some people might be, you might want to just listen to me reading through it with you and talking and discussing the different things to consider with interviews. So with that said, we're going to go right into Google Classroom, and I'm going to go drag it onto my screen here. Okay, you're going to go to classroom.google.com. Excellent. You're going to find the course code that you should already be attached to, registered to, and we're going to go to classwork, and we're going to topic 3, your best foot forward. We're going to open up that PDF. All right. So you should have been, by the time you watch this video, your resume and your cover letter should be at least done in draft copy. Now it's time to meet your potential placement supervisor. And normally with co-op, you wouldn't have a paid employment, but in many cases of the WASA student, you already are in a job. So we're talking more about maybe a future job or an interview, but a few details to nail down before you even meet someone is think about your body language. So does your body language say, hire me? Are you dressed appropriately? During the interview, do you look and sound like someone the company would want around every day? So there's a little image here. We'll take a quick look at it, but this is an image of Phil and Louisa, and they're on their way to a big interview. Phil wants a placement with a cabinet maker, and Louisa wants to work for the fire department. So how do you think Phil and Louisa are presenting themselves that sum up your first impressions? Are these two interview ready? What do you think? So I don't want you to think too long because first impressions happen immediately. So you can see that Louisa might be a really wonderful, hard-working lady, but showing up with her midriff showing, having jewelry and tattoos exposed, can give the wrong first impression to an employer. So how do they exemplify what not to wear? So at least 3 mistakes. I want you to think about it. Give you a minute or two to think about it. What are 3 mistakes Phil has made coming to an interview? let's say that one of the most or least obvious ones is he's coming to an interview with his hands in his pockets. That's sort of a closed off piece of body language. He's also wearing sunglasses. He had his head and his face covered. His shirt is untucked. His pants don't fit properly. So lots of things going wrong there with Phil. With Louisa, we sort of mentioned her outfit is probably not the ideal choice for an interview, unless she was applying for a certain job where maybe she's working in a heavy metal store or something. I don't know. You can see her underwear is showing, definitely not appropriate for an interview. Really think about, it's not like you can't be yourself. You certainly can be easy identifiable and be yourself and use your own style, but just think about what you're wearing as not distracting from who you are and what type of worker you are going to be. So some really easy ways that Louisa and Phil could improve their clothing. Phil could pull his pants up, tighten up his belt, tuck his shirt in, and pull down his hood. Like, he's going for a construction job. He doesn't need to wear a 5-piece suit, but certainly looking a little less scruffy would be in his best interest. Louisa, same thing. The tights aren't terrible. She could just put a nice long shirt over what she's wearing, take out some of those earrings, fix her hair a little, and she doesn't have to change what she wears completely, but she certainly needs to make it more work appropriate. Because no matter what, first impressions count. In the world of work, first impressions are super crucial. Researchers even suggest it only takes 1/10 of a second to make up your mind about someone. That's crazy if you think about it. 1/10 of a second. So if we just go 1, it was 1/10 of that 1 second that someone had made an impression. Does that mean it's right? No, I don't think so. But it's reality. So 55% of people make their first impression by how you look, how you dress, your facial expression, and your body language. 38% by your tone of voice, and 7% by what you actually say. So before you even open your mouth, there's lots of other factors involved, but you certainly can avoid a lot of perceived notions by dressing appropriately for an interview. Okay, so let's talk about your appearance. The first thing people notice is about how you look. You don't have to be a supermodel to impress an interviewer, though. The things to consider are your personal hygiene, your grooming, and dressing appropriately for the interview matter most. And obviously that differs a little bit between which jobs you're applying for, okay? Some things to think about: make sure you shower before your interview, wear clean clothes, use deodorant. Don't wear fragrance or scented products. That's a big thing right now. A lot of people are sensitive to fragrances, so don't wear any fragrances. Make sure your hair is clean and styled and your beards and mustaches are trimmed. Nails should be clean, etc. Makeup and women and jewelry should be subtle, not too out there. And in most cases, you should try to cover your tattoos if you have them. It's not necessarily mandatory, but it's always a good idea to find out what the company does and does not accept in terms of piercings and tattoos and sort of come prepared, especially when it comes to hazards. If you're working in heavy equipment, sometimes wearing rings and stuff can be a hazard. So bear that in mind. And you can also read about the appearance standards of major employers in Ontario, and you can just go online. A lot of that stuff is accessible online. Okay, we're going to skip this activity. The clothing you wear for an interview does not need to be expensive, but it should be clean and professional looking. It doesn't even have to be trendy. Okay, it's best not to wear jeans, avoid sweatpants or loose clothes. It's totally fine to have casual dress pants and a button shirt or a nice polo shirt, but don't wear low-cut tops with spaghetti straps, and make sure that your underwear is not showing, okay? So, use your discretion. Make sure you're dressing appropriately for the place that you're interviewing at. So I'm not going to have you do the dress code comparison chart. We're going to just move on because we kind of want to breeze through this so we can move on to topic 4 fairly quickly. There's only one assignment really for this topic that you have to worry too much about for marks, okay? All right, so you're dressed for the interview. Now it's time for the interview. So we're going to go through 10 interview basics, okay? So what to know. So when you get to the interviewer, you will introduce yourselves, usually with a handshake. So it's really important to have a nice firm handshake, not too weak, not too strong, and feel free to practice. Like, we don't do a lot of handshaking, but definitely starting with a handshake is a good way to start an interview. Obviously, you don't want to be standing on a chair sticking your leg in the air, just like this lady here. How not to highlight your experience and skills. All right, number 2, don't be surprised if the first couple questions are about the weather or whether you want a glass of water. Small talk can actually help you feel more comfortable and feel less nervous. So feel free to even start some small talk. How are you today? Isn't it beautiful outside? Okay, so the third interview basic is general questions. So the real interview starts with general questions. You might be asked about what you know about the company. We talked about that in the resume and cover letter. It's really important to do your research and how you found out about the company you're applying to. And you can show off your research and connections with maybe people who work in that organization, answering these general types of questions. The other types of questions you're going to run into in an interview are skills and experience. So this is the time where you can highlight your skills that relate specifically to a job. So expand the stories that you shared in your resume and your cover letter. Outline the event, show how you use skills, and state how you helped or improved the situation. Okay, strengths and weaknesses. Most people feel comfortable talking about their strengths, but not their weaknesses. But practice makes perfect. And if you practice answering the question, it won't seem too hard when you get asked it. It's very common in an interview to ask your strengths and weaknesses. So some ideas for that are choose strengths that are relevant for the job. So beforehand, take another look at that job description, okay? Select strengths that connect to the job you're applying for. When you discuss your weaknesses, don't choose a skill that is central for the job. So, for example, I'll tell you a mistake I made. When I was applying for my very first teaching job, they said, what are your strengths? And I told them I was an excellent planner, I was organized, I'm very creative. So those were great. And then they asked me what my weakness was. And I told them my weakness was classroom management. And I can tell you right then is when I did not get the job for that teaching job, because it doesn't matter how much you can teach. If you can't manage a group of kids, they're not going to learn. So that lost me the job. So don't say your weakness is anything specifically related to that job. For example, don't say certain animals make you nervous if you're applying for a pet store job that sells rats and tarantulas. Okay? Also, don't list more than one weakness. And never discuss a challenge that you aren't already trying to improve. Okay? So some really good weaknesses are, I have trouble having a work-life balance where sometimes I work too much and I don't take enough time for myself. That's a challenge, but you're working on trying to improve it. All right, number 6, deep thoughts. Some interviewers will ask you deep questions about your future goals and dreams. So don't panic. Try and write these down and think about them before you go into the interview. They're asked because they want to find out what your values and your personality are and see if you're a good fit for the organization. So make sure you prepare. What do you hope to get out of the job? What are your plans for the future? What are you most passionate about? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Those are all questions that you might want to sort of review and go through yourself before going into an interview. All right, number 7, unconventional questions. Sometimes interviewers will ask out of the ordinary questions, okay? So for example, they're sort of scenario based, like how would you deal with this situation? You're asked about a hypothetical situation or a problem, and the interview wants to see how you would problem solve it, okay? What's your favorite author, color, animal, film? What they want to do is reveal something about your personality. So think about that before you're going into an interview, about those unconventional questions. And after this, we're going to go through some questions and you're going to try and answer them yourself. Okay, number 8, turning the tables. Toward the end of the interview, you might be asked if you have any questions for the interviewer. So this is a really good opportunity to show off the research that you have about the company's plans or about training or how you can prepare for the job. Avoid asking if for a promotion. Don't talk finances or money at this point. You just want to ask specific questions about the job. Okay, number 9. How else do you prepare? You review the interview questions and responses. How well and how could you improve? Do this as soon as the interview has been completed, because I guarantee you're going to forget all the questions they asked you the next day. Okay, so always do that right away. At the end of an interview, write down all the questions you were asked and write what you said, and then you can always work on them if you maybe don't get the job that time. All right, follow up. I can tell you from personal experience that even though an interview is over and you might feel that you have completely bombed the interview, it is not over yet. Follow up with a telephone call or an email to say thank you for the opportunity. It's also fine to phone and ask if the placement has been filled, if you waited longer than you expected. Something that I do actually is I will call them or email them, thank them for their time, and I'll ask them and confirm that they received a hard copy of my resume, or I make a reason to call them just to touch base. Don't do it instantly, but within a day or two after your interview, it's completely appropriate. All right, so you're going to stop listening to my voice for a minute because we're going to go over interview do's and don'ts. It's kind of a little comedy video, and then we're going to come back and go through some more tips on answering interview questions. I'm going to give you your assignment for today. Okay, let's go back and watch that video together. Here we go, 4 minutes.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Daily Chat. Today we are going to talk about some tips on helping you land the job interview stage. Now, for a lot of us, this could be the part that we absolutely dislike, but let's face it, we have to get through this part in order to get the job. Today I'm going to be sharing with you some do's and don'ts about the job interview stage. So let's jump right in. We are going to start with some things not to do on a job interview. Number 1 is don't show up late. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry I was late. Like, you don't understand. There was like 4 different accidents and everybody decided to be on the road today. Listen, I really tried to get here on time, but I just couldn't. But I'm really ready for my job interview. I mean, are you ready? Can we get started? I don't want to waste any more of your time. Number 2, don't have a weak handshake. Man, that was a really firm handshake. No, I don't prefer to squeeze the life and blood out of someone's hands, but you sure do give a good handshake there. Number 3, don't talk too much. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy you asked me about my previous employer. So that place was just a madhouse. Like, the boss was horrible, the people were horrible, all they wanted to do was talk all day. I mean, like, who has time to talk all day? I mean, like, people, we got work to do. I mean, we had really fun parties. I mean, I remember getting really drunk at the Christmas party. Number 4, don't chew gum. So, as you can see, I've worked almost everywhere. I've had a lot of retail experience, and oh my gosh, this gum is so good. What's your favorite gum, by the way? Juicy Fruit? I don't have Juicy Fruit, but it's still really good. And number 5 is don't wear too much that it becomes a distraction. What was that? You like my necklace? Oh my gosh, thank you. I wanted to wear this so bad. I thought it would be great with my checkered plaid flannel, sweater for this job interview. I saw on your website you said you guys were creative, and I said, why shouldn't I wear my kale shirt? Hello. So I'm so glad you like my necklace. I mean, thank you. It's distracting? What? It's not distracting. I think it brings out my lipstick. Don't you think so? I love it. Now that we went through some of the things not to do, let's go over the things that you should do. Starting with number 1, make sure to turn off your phone. Number 2, make sure to dress professionally. Number 3, make sure that you print out your resume the night before. And not only that, guys, make sure that you don't fold it up and present it like an origami to the interviewer. Number 4, make sure to have good eye contact. And the last one, coming in at number 5, make sure that you research the company. I think this is a tip that sometimes gets slipped under the rug, but you never know. They may ask you just some brief questions about you and the company, the culture of the company, and if you didn't do your homework and see all that information the night before or even 1 or 2 days before, you might be stuck in that question. Make sure you know what job you're applying for, what their mission statement is, what their background is, because it can really help boost some extra points in that job interview.
Yes, I actually noticed that when I did a little research on your company. I saw that you guys are the top competitor when it comes to marketing.
That's it for this video, guys. I hope you picked up 1 or 2 tips on what you should and shouldn't do on a job interview.
Awesome. Okay, so you got to hear someone else's voice for a while. So we're going to go, you'll see that in Google Classroom, there's also interview info. You'll see that I've also attached an assignment for you to do today. So what you're going to do is we're going to take a quick look at this together, and we sort of went over it already. But some reasons that people don't get hired usually are poor appearance, the inability to communicate clearly, lack of planning, which means you didn't do your research, lack of enthusiasm and confidence, talking poorly of previously employers. If you didn't have a good experience at your last employer, talk about a different employer. Don't talk about poor experiences. Like she said, don't be late. You do need to ask questions. People don't get hired if they don't have any questions prepared. And don't ask your questions about salary. Ask questions about the company and the job. And being impolite. So really, as long as you tick all those boxes and you don't do any of those things, you have a really good chance of getting hired. So your task today for class is to use this document, and you're going to read it over, and you're going to read this section before the interview. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to use this page to set yourself some goals. Find 1 or 2 things in here that you can work on personally and put that information into that assignment. So here it is here, preparing for the interview. You're going to open up the assignment, okay, and use that dual list that we have. Remember, we have access to some great tools in Google. So open up that document, open